Welcome to Pain Free Day. I'm your host, Dr. Joshua Cohen. I'm here with Dave Rapach of FloatLevity.com. It is a sensory deprivation studio or isolation tank studio in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You can find Dave on his on Facebook at Levity412 and Instagram. His Instagram is Levity412. Dave, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, man. Really happy to talk with you.
I'm very happy to talk to you as well. As we were talking earlier, I was telling you I've been interested in sensory deprivation tanks or isolation tanks for a while. I've been hearing about them for years and hearing about the benefits of them. It's funny, I've had a couple patients that have said I should get one in the office for patients. And, so I've always kind of liked it. I've had some friends that have very positive experiences with this, with these. So I was kind of excited to be able to talk to you about it and see, get some ideas of what it's about, give all the listeners an idea of what it's about. So, we can, if they want to, we can have some ways of getting rid of anxiety, depression, all these different, helping to decrease stimuli. So, Dave, why don't you tell us what is an isolation tank? Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. It's we have two tanks here at our studio, and both are 8x4. They are filled with 10 inches of water, and 1,200 pounds of Epsom salt is dissolved in that water, and that's really what helps you float. That the salinity of the water is what helps you stay on top of the water. It's a really interesting thing because when guests come in and they think of floating, they think of a pool with rolled shoulders, a tight core, holding on, and we've hosted a lot of guests that say they can't float. But in the float tank, you can't not float. So, and once you close the door, it's completely black. It gives your eyes a nice rest from all of the light and stimulus we take in. The one thing I really love about our tanks is that you're in complete control of your entire experience. You get in the tank, you leave the door open for a few minutes if you wish, or you close it right away to enjoy those, the whole sensory deprivation. But it's a comfortable experience, and as you said, it helps people with anxiety, depression, aches and pains. So super hyped to be here in Pittsburgh and host the people we do.
That's great. Now, we talked a little bit about this. Do people, do people have any issues with claustrophobia or, any other fears? It seems like it's pretty relaxing in there. And especially, when you showed me through it, the candles are lit. It's a very peaceful environment, and basically it seems like it was designed to put you at ease.
Yeah, when we created our studio here, to give a bit of a framework, we traveled all around the country to different float studios. We floated in every type of tank, and really just kind of took inventory of what we really liked about places and, some things that we wouldn't replicate. And what we found was the things that we appreciated most was when we were most comfortable, provided the best experience. So we curated the Levity experience here to do that. When you enter the room, it's focused on natural elements. When you enter our lobby, it's handmade, local wood, built around the senses and natural. Really helps put guests at ease. So I don't know where I was going with that, but the comfort, pretty much right on.
Yeah, that took care of that, and because I've talked to a couple other people that have said, some people love it, but then there's those that are saying, oh, I don't know if I could lie in the dark like that, just kind of floating. And you did take care of that because it seems like you really do try and make people feel as comfortable as possible. One of the things that I was hearing as well is that, how deep is the water? Am I going to sink? And if it's only 10 inches, you're not going to sink at all, which I think can really help make people feel comfortable.
Spot on. And as soon as you step in, you see that water is not even to your knees. And when you do lie down and you're floating on your back, you can easily put your arm down and touch the bottom. But certainly, and to put a bow on the previous question, it was all about comfort and to know that you are entirely in control of your experience provided us a lot of comfort. And so that's why we went with the tanks that we did and really helped to curate the experience based on our guests' experience. And in our head, this was something not a lot. We were the first ones here in Pittsburgh to have a standalone studio. And people didn't know about this, so it was obviously something different. And we wanted our guests to have a high level of comfort coming in because we knew if they were comfortable in their experience, the benefits from their float would be with them, and they would see validity in it, that it really would help them, that it wouldn't be one and done, that it was like, oh, over time, this could really decrease my level of anxiety or depression. So spot on.
Now, are there how popular are isolation tanks? Is there a lot around the country? I would assume, just kind of looking at things like chances are there, in San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, there's probably a good amount of them. But in other areas, I don't know.
What we found was in August we'll have been open 6 years. So to put it into perspective, when we opened, they were only mainly largely in more progressive states. Like we spent a lot of time in Colorado with those float centers. But you're right, it was Seattle. Like I said, very progressive areas 6-7 years ago. But man, I'll share with you what I share with everybody. These could be on every street corner and there still wouldn't be enough. There still wouldn't be enough because everybody can benefit from it. So I don't think it's one of those things where it can be oversaturated. My only hope as somebody in the business and a leader in the industry would be that standard is withheld. So like there could be 1,000, but those 1,000 in my hope and my heart would be like they really take care of their guests.
Are there any certifications for any of the float studios or licensing or anything?
Not really. There's some studios that offer like a mentorship that you go and train with them for a week. It's an apprentice program, and that's wonderful. But and that's kind of where fear of people thinking they can just open up a float studio. Kind of like folks that think they can just open up a restaurant. There really isn't. I wish there was, to just ensure standard for everybody. Because when we started opening, we started working towards creating our studio, there was clearly no handbook to this. So which was invigorating and energizing because it gave us the opportunity to create what we wanted, create our vision. Nothing was imposed on us, but at the other end of the spectrum, I would really like there to be something.
That makes sense. Now, how long have they been around? How long, can you tell us a little bit of the history of isolation
Sure, right
tanks?
on. The first one was built by Dr. John C. Lilly, and he was just an American physician who was into a lot of different things. He did a lot of experiments with trying to measure and observe consciousness. And what he felt was that if you eliminate a lot of the stimulus coming into the body, it'll clear the mind and clear that fog where you'll then be able to hear that inner voice and consciousness. He went about that by creating a float tank in 1954 that was completely ugly. Like, it was awful. God bless. But I do not know if I would have gotten that 1954 float tank. Things have come a long way. But I share that 1954 because it's been around for such a significant amount of time, giving good health benefits.
What I was reading about it is that it was taken very seriously until he started experimenting more with LSD and ketamine in the isolation tanks, which, as you and I have discussed a little bit, it certainly can help expand your mind, help open certain things up. But at that time, a lot of people in the medical profession were looking at it as that made him look like more of a quack. As we know now, there certainly can be therapeutic benefits to psychedelics if used in the right way, in the right circumstances, so on and so on. And I'd never recommend doing it without any supervision and without checking with a medical professional first.
Certainly.
But, this was the isolation tanks, from what I read, were taken very seriously, and there were a lot of very good benefits until the 60s, and, as things started getting a little more muddled. But then I was seeing as well, it's like back in the 80s, they really started becoming more prominent again. People really started using them more, and then more studies came about on them, from what I could tell.
Yes, and then there was that Kevin Spacey movie.
Which one was that?
Oh, gosh, I have not seen it. Everyone asks but it was a science fiction movie where he had entered a float tank around the 80s, and it was a piece of science fiction. But people thought, if you get in the float tank,
okay,
this is what's going to happen to me. So there was a drastic reduction. But now, with how much information is free on the internet to find out all the good benefits, it's like one little movie isn't gonna.
Sure, but then also, along those same lines, with all the information out there now, that's part, we were discussing this earlier, that's part of what is driving people to isolation tanks, because we're so overstimulated, and there's just so much stimuli now that we need a break from it. And for a long time, I've been saying to my patients, rather than speeding us up, we need something to calm us down. We need more things to help us recover, because everything is so, our environment is kind of toxic. We need to recover from it. We need to take a break from it. We need to do a news fast periodically. We need to get away from all the toxicity in our environment. You and I were talking a little bit about this, but I've seen a statistic that, just for me, it put it very well into perspective, that the amount of stimulation that we have now in one day is equivalent to what a human being would have in the medieval times in an entire lifetime. And we're still physiologically, we're still the same person.
Oh, that's wild to just think of that. What we've done to our central nervous system and our wirings and how hijacked they are, comparing it to, like you said, essentially the same being however many years ago.
Yeah, and that's why it's like, we need a break from all this stimuli, and that's what it seems like the isolation tanks would really help out with, just kind of taking a break from the world and, being able to just relax for a little bit.
Well, it's so interesting because the folks that'll say, like, I don't know if I can, give myself the hour. I'm not sure. And everybody's experience is different.
I've thought that as well.
Right on. And it's surprising how, okay, so for example, every Sunday that screen report hits on my iPhone, right? And it shows how many hours per day I've been staring at my iPhone. And if yours is over an hour, you have an hour to give to yourself somewhere, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because the way you function after a float, your clarity and thought, your level of empathy, and just your overall good feeling, you'll then see why it's so important to give yourself the hour. But if you never get there, you're never going to get there. So it's very tough to, it's one of the reasons we don't do a lot of aggressive marketing, of trying to talk people into doing this, because it's something that they'll experience after they do it, and then afterwards they're like, oh my gosh, I haven't felt this good. We've had moms come out almost in tears because they haven't heard silence since the day their kids were born. Right? Yeah.
That's funny.
Right? We've also had people come out empowered because in that silence they're not clouded with staring at their phone or flicking through Instagram or doing social media, but they've spent an hour alone with their thoughts and realized what a good person they are. There's so many things, but until you take that break, right, like, you're never going to get there.
Well, and it's funny too, that makes sense, that if aggressive marketing is kind of like oxymoronic to what you're trying to do, it kind of it's counter to what you're trying to do as well.
Well, that's when we first opened, one of the things here, we don't have a phone. I don't know if we'll always stay with not having a phone as we get busier and busier. It just seems like a natural thing. But we opened up without a phone because the first week we would get calls and be like, why do I want to do this? Like, I get it. The natural reaction is, well, you're going to feel better. You're going to do this. Like, I don't know why you want to do this. Like, I'm not going to tell you you're going to feel, like, great. Like, you got a bunch of stuff. Like, just get in the tank, like, give it an hour. Here's our experience, our reviews. And that way we've built an amazing organic following of people that understand, like, that they do their research. They know they're doing too much. We see a lot of type A personalities that have found reprieve through coming here. We host a lot of busy people that are doing great things, that have understood just how beneficial their productivity is to after a float. Like, okay, if you want to be type A, let's lean in on that. You stare at your phone 3 hours a day. Is that helping you out any? Maybe, maybe not. But I can guarantee after an hour alone of decompressing and letting your mind relax that you're going to come out with 5 more ideas. You're going to have your next week planned. So let's lean in on efficiency. So that's why it's very tough to have getting those calls and people just kind of like, why do I want to do this? I don't know. What do you got going on? So
You tell me why you want to do this.
Right.
You know?
Smart man. Yes, sir.
That makes a lot of sense, though, because you can't tell what's going on in somebody's mind. But I have to say, too, it's like just for them calling you, chances are that means that they should be there doing that, you know?
Yeah.
And part of what you and I were talking about earlier that I really like is that, you know, it seems like this just kind of helps you focus and it helps you just be, you know, for lack of a better expression, but being more mindful, being more focused in the present, being more focused in what's going on now. And I do a lot of exercising, I do a lot of mountain biking, I do a lot of yoga, weightlifting, kettlebell, stuff like that. And part of what I like about that is I get some of my best ideas when I'm doing that, because all that I'm thinking about is the activity that I'm doing. I'm able to tune out the outside world and have a couple of minutes where, not that I'm just focusing on myself, but I'm able to kind of check in with myself, see how I'm doing, see how I'm feeling, see how I'm mentally doing, you know, and it's really important if we want to keep, you know, going on in this world.
And see, I hear that talk, and when I hear people say that, in my head, you're already doing what happens in the tank, but in the tank, it would be like that level of mindfulness on steroids.
That makes sense, because then you're not having the distractions of the movements or, you know, of other things, you know, the neurological connections with your body.
Even just like our body's a distraction. All of the things from the temperature in here, our body's feeling, to the lights, to the cars that are driving by, to the people that are walking by, we're constantly taking that in. Even in a good, we've done yoga sessions here with people. Even in those types of qualified teachers doing great stuff, that is still happening. But when you're in the tank, you're not bound by your body. Your body's not distracting you. The water's warm to 93.5 degrees, the outside temperature of your skin. So you literally feel like you're floating. The skin receptors don't feel that water anymore. It's like neutral. It's not there. And
there's a lot of salt in there, which makes the water so buoyant that you're not going to sink. Now, that's really interesting about how our bodies distract us, because I really do agree with you with that. And so one of the things that I've experienced, you know, and so the type of muscle work that I do, it's trigger point therapy. It's a neurological technique. So I'm working with the neurological system to kind of decrease overall neurological irritation, neurological sensation, because your neurological system drives everything. Your muscles move everything. And so there's a whole lot of, you know, proprioception coming in from your muscles that, you know, that go into your brain and can be very distracting. And one of the very interesting ways that I've seen this play out is with children with ADD. In that, it's like, you know, so we're all born with these certain, you know, reflexes as infants that you generally grow out of. And what they are, they're self-protective mechanisms, you know, just different reflexes that you're born with. But some kids don't grow out of them because everybody's wired a little bit differently. And so what might happen is that a young kid, he might turn his head and his shoulder moves. And it's just how he's wired. But if he's not able to grow out of that, then that can be horribly distracting, because if they're in class and every time they move their head and their shoulder moves, it's going to be very distracting. It's just another distraction for them, you know, and so that makes sense in that, you know, the calmer your body is, the better off you're going to be able to focus, the better you're going to be able to think, the clearer you're going to be able to just exist.
Right on. And like I said, that's just your level of efficiency and clarity, whether it's not even that you plan your next week or your next month or come out with the next big 3 ideas. It can just be as simple as, like, you come in and float in the evening, you go home and you get an amazing night's sleep. Like, it doesn't always have to be deep. We don't always have to solve, you know, the world's problems in one float. Sometimes it's just as simple as, like, man, I just need to clear the browser and get an amazing night's sleep. I've just been running hot for the past month.
You were using that analogy earlier that I really liked, you know, with the browser and with tabs, and it's a way to kind of clear things out and, you know, clear the tabs. I really like that. But I have to say as well, man, a good night's sleep is really, it's very restorative, and we're learning more and more about what a good night's sleep does for us. And if you don't sleep, it ages you prematurely because it increases stress levels, cortisol levels, you know, basically it breaks your body down.
Agreed. And that's one of those things where I had a bit of a laugh, because I just talked with a friend the other day, and I was just, you know, being closed with COVID, and as a business owner working the last, you know, 18 out of 20 days. And he was like, man, you just need a good night's sleep. And I was like, you're not wrong. And I scheduled myself for a float, and that, I mean, the way you feel after just getting a restful night's sleep. And like I said, for us, is it not being, it's completely natural. It's just that heavy decompression of the central nervous system for you to go home and get a sleep is so it's great.
Yeah, so beneficial, and especially now during this pandemic COVID-19 time, everybody's stressed out. I've been seeing it across the board where all of us, we have increased stress, we have decreased activity levels, and everybody's spending more time at home. Some people are working more, some people are all stressed out from that, but a lot of people are not working at all, and they're stressed out from that as well,
I agree, man. And one of my big things in life is I feel like we have, whatever you want to call it, God, the creator, whatever it may be, but we get a certain amount of energy each day, and that we need to expel that in some positive direction, in some way. And if you haven't done that, if you've squandered that away, then that's where that ramped up. Like, you could have done better. You could have expelled that energy in a positive way. Like, empty the tank every day.
That's, and if you don't exercise or move, that's a way of kind of getting rid of some of that excess energy. And I see it across the board where it's like people that if you're not exercising, your sleep patterns are a lot worse, but just going out and going for a walk, doing a little bit of exercise, doing a little bit of yoga, honestly, just doing sun salutations. And, if you can make it through a regular sun salutation, you'll be moving great. You'll sleep better. But it takes time, and you have to kind of work at it. You have to focus at it, and it doesn't just happen overnight.
Certainly.
Let me see. So, I've read a lot about the benefits of isolation tanks. One of the things that I've seen is that it helps to improve creativity. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the instances where you get a blank slate. I mean, if I could kind of walk you through theoretically of someone that would come through for the idea of boosting creativity, their first float, they're going to get a really good look at their canvas and what's going on. And it can be pretty wild. It can be like, oh my gosh, all of this stuff that's going on right now. Of course, I can't come up with any new ideas. I'm still in this slew of whatever I'm dealing with. But usually by the end, they clear that canvas. And the second they get a taste of like, okay, things are, that second float though, they come in with a canvas that's almost blank. When you're not tasked, like as we were setting up here, one of the things I was sharing with, I had a friend that wants to get together, and it was like, all of a sudden you have to think of all the other things that are happening next week. And it puts a cue in your mind of like, okay, what's going on there? It literally, I could have forgot an idea in between. There's so much going on that to be able to grasp an idea and to work on it creatively is extremely difficult in today's society. Even for creatives, people who are artists and they make their living that way, just the distractibility that we're in is ridiculous. So to get in the tank without any distractions frees the mind from those daily tasks of whether it be physically of navigating gravity just with our bodies or thinking about what we're having for dinner tonight. When the mind isn't tasked with all of that, with so much of like just stuff, its ability to create is exponential then. It's just like freeing up RAM space on a computer. If you start closing things down or my phone starts getting sluggish and it's like, oh, geez, no wonder you have 16 apps open. How about we close some of those boys? You close them down, all of a sudden things start working better.
Things work smoother. Yeah.
My man.
That's funny. That reminds me of a story that I read about Albert Einstein, that basically he wore the same clothes every day so he didn't have to waste brain power figuring out what to wear in the morning.
Listen, there's something to that, right? There's something to that. Steve Jobs was very similar. I have a friend who's very similar. I see him and it's not a black turtleneck, but it's the damn same thing every time. And I'm like, my man. And he's like, well, I can buy a 3-pack of these shirts for da-da-da-da. I don't have to think about it. He's not wrong.
Yeah, hey, that works. So some other things that I've read that it helps improve concentration and focus. That
was very interesting, as you shared earlier. Those that live with ADD or a short attention spans, forget how long an hour is, but we also forget how short an hour is. And when you get in there, some folks come out and they feel like it was 10 minutes. Other folks come out and they're like, no, I felt that hour. I feel amazing, but that was an hour. When there's nothing for your attention to jump to, what does it focus on? I mean, it's rhetorical, but like it's complete silence. It like you're left alone with your thoughts. Yeah.
And so it's along those lines. I kind of think that a lot of people use substances to clear their mind, to kind of get away from their thoughts. And it just reminds me of a song by it's a band called NoFX. It's called Bob, and they're like, he goes to see his doctor, and he says, the doctor says, what are you thinking about? And he says, that's the point. I want to think about nothing.
Right.
Right. And that basically he was an alcoholic, and he had to stop drinking.
Gotcha.
Gotcha. So. Yeah, it's like it's hard to clear our minds. It's hard, and we were talking a little bit about it earlier. In that, I see people that don't want to be alone with their thoughts. They're like, they just kind of want to jump from one thing to another. But you have to be able to control your thoughts. If you can't control your thoughts, you can't control anything. You're just at the whim of whatever's going on, next to you or near you. And like you had a very good way of putting it, saying, you're just reacting then. What was it you instead you want to.
Always in a reactionary mode is never good. And someone much wiser than me once said that you always want to work towards a response. You want to dodge that reaction, because everyone has a knee-jerk reaction. But that's not who you are. That's not who you are. You are who you are within your response, and you have the ability to choose who you are within that response. Some people just selfishly impose when they're mad. Like, have you ever been in traffic and someone honked their horn? Like, my man, like, well, a response is much better than a reaction. It shows there's been reflection. And when you're able to temper your emotions, I don't think a lot of guys, especially us men, feel it's real important to suppress those emotions, not show emotions. But that's not it. You need to have dominion over your emotions. You need to have some level of understanding of, this is how I react and this is why. And that just doesn't happen. It's something you actively have to work on. And the float tank is an extremely good tool to make that happen. For you to understand, like, well, let me take a little deeper dive into here why I do get upset. Some things are completely irrational. Like, I'll always get upset if someone's eating with their mouth open.
Sure.
Right. See? That's always going to happen. I'm not going to rewire that. But there's things that we can rewire, that we can have a better response as to, not a reaction.
Or just not react as much, decrease that reaction, But I do see it, and I agree with that, in that our reactions get wired into our system. So something happens and it's more just a reaction. You're just kind of reacting. You're not even thinking about it. I think anxiety is like that to there's a certain component of it, and you just kind of react to things, and it gets wired into our system, and it's hard to break that reaction. It's hard to break that wiring. I think we all do things like that, where we're just kind of reacting and not really thinking about things. I mean, I know myself, kind of what you're describing in a car when I'm driving, and, I have a way of imposing my annoyance on somebody else, and it's not fair. And I'm really trying very hard at this point not to honk. And it's funny, during this whole COVID period, as I'm driving around, I'm like, I need to use this period to slow down, to not be rushing. There's nobody on the roads. There's no excuse to be honking. I need to, try and change this reaction.
Are you a honker?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. You said that with such conviction. I am.
And I'm not proud of it by any stretch, because I kind of look at it as yelling, and it's like every time I honk or every time I yell, I'm wrong for doing it. It feels good at that moment, but then afterwards you're like, I did not need to do that, because usually the person I'm honking at, and like they're going the same place that I am, and I'm going to end up pulling out, like parking next to them or something.
I can give you a story. We lived in D.C., and that's spot on. Driving down whatever road, 495 or whatever it is, this guy is just on my tail. He's blowing the horn and stuff, and I don't get there, man. Like, it's just, go around. You know what I mean? But sure enough, we pulled in the same. We're neighbors.
See, and then that guy, he should feel like, he was being not so nice.
It was literally like, my man, like, you just never know. But in my head, how I combat that is I always think, and this is a nice little hack, I always think the person in front of me, because that's usually when the stress comes out, when I got to get somewhere and this person's in front of me, that's when reflecting, that's when my anxiety is at the top. And I need you to get out of my way. But I think that's my grandma in there.
That, it's funny you say that, because that's what I've been thinking as well. I'm like, it could be a little old lady, and even if it's not, I'm still like, every time I do honk at somebody or yell, I'm wrong.
Listen, we're making movement on Josh here. We're making movement. We're fixing honkers.
But I mean, actually, though, along these lines, I'm a very big fan of meditation. Yeah. My father meditated for many years. I've been exposed to it. I've really liked it. I've done it for a long time because I think it's a good way to decrease your reactivity to the world. And it's listening to a guy talk about meditation, where he was actually talking about exercise at first, and he's like, "Yeah, I just started exercising." It's a guy, Duncan Trussell. I was listening to his podcast.
Right
on.
On.
Very interesting, and he was like, I just started exercising, and so at this, and now the rest of the world feels lighter. He was like laughing. He's like, I know the rest of the world's not lighter. I've just gotten stronger. He's like, kind of like when you start meditating, the rest of the world becomes less annoying. He's like, it's not that it's becoming less annoying. You're becoming less reactive. And I was like, that's such a great way to explain that. And that's what, I need to work at. And I think a lot of people need to work at.
And very true. Everybody does. Everybody does. It's that old saying, if you meet Buddha on the path, that's not the one. And if anybody tells you that they've mastered that, it's just not true. We all have something. Like I said, I could be sitting at a dinner party, and if someone starts eating with their mouth open, I can't control that. Like like the honks, like, and something inside.
For me, that wouldn't bother me.
Right on. And that's why it's so important to keep a just mental checklist of like remembering just that humility. And like I said, I mean, for me, thinking of the word, the dichotomy, the difference of response and reaction. Response just has that built-in reflection. It implies that you've reflected on it. You've taken time. You've looked at things objectively. And it's part of slowing down. Like I said, it's just part of slowing down.
That goes along with recovery. That goes along with having increased sleep. That goes, all of that. And another thing that I like very much to help with recovery is cold showers. That stuff really helps out as well to a certain degree. I wouldn't necessarily say it's different than the isolation tank, but it's a different type of recovery. You seem a little skeptical about that.
No, not skeptical. See, and that's where I love being very objective, playing devil's advocate, even within my own mind of like, I full-heartedly believe it. And we have guests who do the same, like after their float, because it's amplified, their senses are amplified, and they like that cold shower then to really feel that. But it ain't for me, dog. It ain't for me. I like those hot showers. It just ain't for me, man. And like I said, and that's part two. Like all of these things, whether it be rest, recovery, what have you, it's important to understand that if something doesn't work for you, that doesn't mean you're wrong either. Right?
I completely 100% agree with you, because everybody is different. We're all wired a little bit differently. There's a saying in anatomy that I really like, that we're as different on the inside as we are on the outside, and not that our heart's going to be in our head, but, we're just kind of like, we're just all wired a little bit differently. Everybody's a little different. So just because you react well to something doesn't mean that I'm going to, and doesn't mean that we're going to have the same benefit, effects.
That's so cool. That's the heart of what we do here. When we hire new attendants, one of the big talks I give them is that, whether floating, I believe and I'm passionate about that floating could really help everybody, but the same way you probably feel that way about cold showers, you're just not going to get some people there, but that no matter what, they're going to leave our studio saying they had a good experience, it was clean, and people were super friendly. The best we can do is frame it that way, with the understanding that, like, it's not going to be for everyone.
100%. And actually, even with a cold, it's like, I don't think the cold's for everybody. The muscle work that I do, the trigger point therapy, basically, I kind of look at it as, if you have muscles, I can help you out, which is everybody. Yeah. But realistically, though, I'm not going to be able to help every single person out that walks through my doors. There are going to be some issues that, maybe, two people with the same type of back pain, one person I'll be able to help out, and another person you might not be able to, just because something else might be going on that you have no idea about,
Yeah, and as I shared with you, having two kids, our 4-year-old, her name's Hope, and she is she's phenomenal. But trying to work that into teaching her young of understanding that not everybody likes the same stuff and that it's okay. The analogy I use with her is I really like spicy food and she does not. And so I'll say to her, well, Daddy likes, hot sauce or whatever it is. And she's like, yeah. And why don't you like it, Hope? And she's like, I just don't. I'm like, that's the way it is sometimes. Like, no one's okay. Easier one is, I don't like mushrooms on my pizza. That doesn't make mushrooms bad, and I'm not wrong. It's personal preference. And I think in this world, I think it would be especially helpful to keep a pliable mindset in those things. And try what works for you. Maybe cold showers works. Maybe float tanks work. Maybe releasing those but it's people that are open to the ideas are the ones that get the most success.
I would totally agree with that. And there's always going to be somebody out there who, a friend who just lost 20 pounds, who just got in great shape or just did this, but what they did to get to that point might not necessarily work for you. And generally what we do is if we're trying to get in shape, or if we're trying to do something else, we'll generally look around and see somebody who's been able to do it successfully, and let's start talking to them about what worked for them. But that might not necessarily work for you. It's hard to kind of understand that, and hard to understand, also it's different motivating, we all have different motivating factors as well.
Big time, yes, sir.
And as we were saying, it might motivate, different people might have different motivating factors to come in here, versus and same thing with exercising, so on and so on, So, yeah, I kind of figure too, though, it's whatever, for me personally, whatever drives somebody into my office, it's a good thing. And I kind of look at it as, even if, just by stepping through the door, they're trying to take a positive, step for their health. And just by stepping in here, they're trying to take a positive step for their health. They're trying to do something, achieve, some goal that is good for them.
Right on, man. That's why I think it's very important to organically build that aggressive, telling people that they have to do this, they have to do that. I think it's more of a turn off, and it will turn more people off that would be open to. So like I said, yeah, definitely agree.
Yeah. Let me see. So what are some other benefits that it can help out with? Because I've seen that it can help out with athletic performance.
Yeah, absolutely. We host a lot of athletes that enjoy it they're not sore the next day. It breaks down the lactic acid. We all have that story of our grandma who used to throw Epsom salt in the baths for a good soak. It's been around for hundreds of years. In the tank, there's 1,200 pounds. There's not one cup. There's 1,200 pounds of Epsom salt. So that really aggressively helps the body recover. It gets rid of the lactic acid, the muscle soreness. It gives the body more time to heal, where it's not fighting gravity, where it's not tight. Also, it gives a great opportunity for athletes to visualize. We've hosted mixed martial artists, and one thing they'll talk about is visualizing different positions, or jiu-jitsu players before competitions. And just with that visualization, without distraction, to really focus on the nuances has been beneficial.
That makes a lot of sense. I've read a lot about visualization for athletes and how much it helps out. It's funny, my kids play baseball, and I was just talking to my older son about that. I was like, come on, we're going to take you through tomorrow from when you wake up in the morning, what you're going to do. Right. You're going to wake up, eat something, go to the bathroom, take 20 swings, stuff like that. It makes a difference.
So smart, man, because that's where I think any level of anxiety you feel in your life, one of the biggest things you could do is just prepare. And preparedness is like walking through the steps. Anytime you do something for the first time, there's going to be such a high level of anxiety. But if you do it in a safe environment that you feel comfortable in, it gets easier and easier. And with that, your level of being relaxed is better. You're more relaxed. I was trying to think of how to phrase that. But your level of relaxation, and that's when you perform the best. Whether it be for baseball, whether it's podcasting, whether it's working on somebody or hosting a guest, the more you prepare, the more I check the rooms to make sure they're spot on, they're standard, the better I feel. So very smart to start it early too. Very smart.
Yeah, and that makes sense too. The more relaxed you are, the better you're going to be able to react and respond to everything.
Right on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I also read too that it can help out with relieving pain. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we do host. We host a lot of people with aches and pains that just, of course, always defer to checking with the physician. But like, some guests would rather float for an hour and have those benefits of pain-free for a week than take a pill every day.
I'm a big believer in that. With what I do, I love the fact that I'm able to treat people conservatively, treat people's pain without having to use any medication or any surgery or anything like that. I'm a very big believer in that because you never know what the long-term effects of any medication are. There's side effects to everything. I'm a big believer in, it's just physics. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. You take an ibuprofen, there's going to be some reaction to that in your body.
Especially without my tinfoil hat on, the opioid epidemic and the numbers of people getting addicted from what their doctor prescribes them. I'll butcher the numbers now, but they were astonishing. The study did with people who were on them for a week, like 7 days, and the prevalence of addiction after 21 days. Astonishing. Scary. If we can provide people with relief without that, and like I said, I'm proponent of somebody in good faith. If someone breaks their arm, they're going to need something, right? Like that's,
sure.
You're not going to come float because you broke your arm. Like it's
right.
In total support of ethical.
You have a herniated disc, you're not going to come here to cure it.
Spot on. But to be able to provide people relief from aches and pains, whether it's their shoulder, their back, that zero gravity is so restorative and so helpful that just not having gravity on our bones for an hour is very restorative, helps with aches and pains.
I've seen that, and especially with people with chronic pain, where it gets wired into your system, and it's a weird kind of phenomenon that you actually become more sensitive to the issue versus less sensitive to it. Just being able to lie there and not having to use any of your muscles or move, I can see how that would be very, very beneficial. There's a lot of people out there like that, especially with arthritis, where the main saying with arthritis is that it's going to hurt to move, but it hurts more not to move. And so it's a nice way for people to get out of, to kind of get away from their aches and pains for a little bit. There's my father, he was a big fan of this guy named Ramblin' Jack Elliott, a musician, and he has a song called the Arthritis Blues, which I was trying to get as a theme for my podcast. And, basically he talks about how it's like, you can drink, you can do whatever you want, you can roll on the ground, but the pain's just going to be there again the next day, and so if that is the case, if you're going to be having chronic pain, do what you can to manage it without doing harm to your body, and doing something like an isolation tank is going to be a lot less expensive and a lot better for your body than taking narcotics all of the time.
Yes.
Fully support. But I'm a big believer as well in doing anything that you can to help reduce pain, and that's where I've gotten more into the cold with that, because cold, there are people that do claim, like there's a guy named Wim Hof who's in Europe who does a lot of work with the cold, and his acolytes claim that by soaking in glacier lakes for like 20 minutes a day, they can control their Parkinson's pain, rheumatoid arthritis pain, and enough people claim that I think there's something to that. I was talking to a friend of mine who he has really bad stenosis, and so the only way he could get rid of his pain was by soaking in literally just an ice bath with only his lips exposed, and he did it for 20 minutes at a time, but he said it was the only thing that would control his pain. So I legitimately think there is something to that, but you have to use it in different ways, and I kind of think whatever you can do that isn't harmful to control pain, to minimize pain, go for it. And that's where I love yoga, different types of exercise, isolation tanks, there's a lot of things out there that we can do to help minimize our pain. It's not going to get rid of it. It won't cure things. Once you have arthritis, you're never going to get rid of it, but you can do a lot to minimize it and decrease the progression of it, so that 5 to 10 years from now, you're not taking more medication. You're not worse off. You're not not in a wheelchair now. Ideally 5 to 10 years from now, if you take care of yourself and manage these things intelligently, then you can still be, feeling as good as you are now, if not a little better, which would be great, and what they're saying now with aging is that, ideally we are going to be living longer, but who wants to live longer if you're in a ton of pain and can't move?
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. So Why don't you take us through a session? What would a session be like?
Easiest way is everyone books online, and that's a really nice thing for us because you get to pick the time that best suits your schedule. You schedule online when you get to the studio. Me or one of our friendly attendants walks you through. We like to take a stop at the filters to show guests how our water's cleaned. And then,
which that was really cool to see, by the way. I have had fish tanks. I have a saltwater tank, so I understand water filtration a little bit,
right.
And it's immense.
Awesome. Is real important. And one hiccup that I saw a lot of other studios missed, and we were kind of the first ones to do it. They would hide those. They would hide their filtration systems, and the ones that they would get were like sufficient. And there's a difference between sufficient and like above and beyond. So with my vision was to put those on display, like to show people, look how great, like this water is cleaner than,
Well, so that makes a lot of sense because that's something that I hear from people a lot about, swimming pools, just any type of public places, about, the cleanliness of the water, and especially now with everything going on.
And that's why it's, for us, we put that on display. They're not very, they're industrial. They're nice. You know what I mean? But it was really so our guests could see these are the machines that clean the water. To geek out a little bit over it, there's about 220 gallons of water in each tank. The pumps that they're hooked up to are graded for 70 gallons per minute, and the pumps run for 15 minutes between each float, so it's turned over multiple times. And it's like a 3-tier system. We have the what they call the mechanical filter that catches like any particulates, hair. Someone would leave a earplug or something in there, it'll get caught there. Then behind it we use that UV light, which is shown to just blast anything that's thinking of growing. That said, in the tank we also use a food grade hydrogen peroxide that grabs onto anything that's thinking of growing and eliminates it. One step further, the water is 3 times as dense as the Dead Sea with salt. There's a reason that right. So maybe even I should have started there with the water's 3 times as dense as the Dead Sea, and we run it through that system multiple times for 15 minutes between each and every guest. It's super important, and that's why we put it on display.
Isn't it accurate that the water in the Dead Sea, since there's so much salt in there, nothing really grows in it?
Yes, sir, and that's why Dead Sea, and ours is 3 times that density. So it's like even so, but we just went crazy. And then, like I said, after we showed them, our guests, the filters, and then we walk them through the process. We have those crazy big showers that just really help you twofold. One, to help rinse any particulates off. It's a 17-inch rainfall shower. You just have to stand underneath it. But we use a natural hemp soap that's good for skin and hair.
Well, what you said earlier when you were kind of walking me through it, I really liked when you said, it's like, well, you want to wash off the outside world before you get into the isolation tank. And I was like, that makes sense.
Right on. I really designed our studio for levels. When you first enter the main lobby, it's very nice. It's open. This is your first removal from the real world. You can still kind of see it there. But once you go behind the barn door, it's one more step removed. And then furthermore, once into your own individual private room, you're just one more level away from the world. Take that a step further, and even when you get into the tank, we really wanted to remove just the daily stuff that people deal with on a daily basis, and we did that by designing our studio to remove those at each level. So it's like when you're in there, it's your own private room. The door can lock, which was really important to us. My wife and I traveled around to places. Some rooms had locks, others didn't. We always felt it was weird if you didn't have a lock. So we put locks on our doors to help guests feel secure.
That makes sense.
Right on. And then after your shower, you rinse off, like I said, just the craziness. And you get in the tank, and it's 10 inches of water. And you lay down, and you literally just float like a cork. It's weightlessness. It's really the only place in the world that you can experience true zero gravity with weightlessness. It's not pushing on the body. and it's great for stretches and stuff. We start each session with a little bit of music from a local musician to help you get comfy. And then that fades and you have that hour-long silence. And you find out how many tabs are open, man. You figure out really what's bouncing around your head. And you get a clear indication kind of who you are. Not right away. Fair play. That first float really is just kind of like you give yourself the hour. You're waiting for benefits to happen. They happen when you step out. When your body goes from that weightless environment with no stimulus coming in, when you step out of the tank, that for the first time is when you start feeling how restored your body is, how clear the mind is, how relaxed you are.
That makes sense, though, that you're not going to, like, I feel with anything, you need to do it at least a few times to really get a good benefit to it. And you're not going to get immediate benefits from anything. And unfortunately, our society kind of pushes everybody to say, you need to have it now. You need to get the effects now. If you don't have the effects now, then move on to something else.
Right.
And it's like most things, though, most good things, most things that are worth it, takes time. It takes time to work at, it takes time to build things up. And that makes sense that it's like, even going here. Well, how many sessions do you recommend for people?
Kicking around a new model that I think is really neat. What I've seen, a trend is to kind of work with guests, take an assessment of where they're at before and after. We have like a very interesting program that I'm vetting now. I would, in my suggestion now, what we're offering now, I would always say 3 floats. And reason being that first one, it's going to be awkward. It's no different than if you're going to a yoga studio for the first time or trying cryotherapy or going to see a chiropractor for the first time. You have that bit of apprehension. You're unsure. It's new, as we talked with baseball. Like, it's new. It's something like, okay, this is a trial run. After your first float, you'll get in there. When you get out, you'll feel good. You'll have that clarity. But it's not until you then step out. Your second float, you know what to expect. You know what the studio looks like. You know you're comfortable. You know the process. Your experience is better. You know how to clear the mind much better, a little quicker. And then that third one, we've seen a pivot in people that third float is they know the benefits. They know their favorable time. They know how to decompress. And it's a home run. And it's just better and better each time.
That makes a lot of sense. With what I do, the effects of my treatments are cumulative. It takes time for it to build up.
Spot on.
But I like to joke with people. It's like people have an expectation that they're going to come in after being injured and after being treated, they'll be able to do stuff they were never able to do before, like do cartwheels. I'm like, it's not necessarily that. It's kind of anticlimactic where you're kind of like, oh, I was able to reach that cereal box on top of the refrigerator without yelping in pain, and usually people will think about it afterwards. Or I was able to get out of the car without pain, without limping, which is a small issue to people who don't have back pain. But if you have back pain, getting in and out of cars sucks, and so with stuff like this, and what I found with meditation is that it's like it just makes you less reactive, makes you just kind of takes the edge off of things. And if you can take the edge off of things in a natural way, it's so much more beneficial, longer lasting, and affects us so much more positively. Because what do most of us do at this point to take the edge off of things? You come home and have a drink, or something like that. And we know, long term alcohol is not good for us. I personally see, I've seen this in study wise with, the overall negative effects of alcohol will vastly outweigh any of the positive effects of it. Any of the heart healthy benefits from red wine, they're going to be outweighed by the negatives of alcohol. So the theory that there's always, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. It's kind of nice to do something positive for your body where you're not going to have any negative reactions to it.
True. And it's stay in the course. It's just helping you be a better person, whether physically or mentally.
So now, what would be the cost of a session?
We do 60-minute sessions are $59. We do 90-minute sessions for $79. We also do monthly memberships, which, like I said, is great for the price cut, and you make that commitment to wellness. Like, I'm going to come in once a month. I'm going to get a nice price cut. And those go one for, our gold membership is $49 a month. That's one 60-minute float. We do a platinum membership, which is $89, two 60-minute floats. it's almost $30 savings. And our big one is the Diamond, which is $4 a month, and it's $159. So it takes the price down to less than $40 per float for our Diamond membership, which for an hour-long health service is fair.
That's more than fair. I mean, if you go to get a massage for an hour, you're going to be paying, $150, $200.
Exactly.
If you're paying less than that, then the person might not be that good.
Right. Understood.
There is that, you're always going to, for good quality things, you always pay a little bit more, but that is very reasonable, especially when you kind of consider all the other things out there, and that's, I look at what I do as well. It's like when you look at the cost of like surgery, a cost of long-term taking care of a chronic issue, what I'm doing for, one session, it doesn't cost very much long-term. It's, in something like this, if this can help you out emotionally, mentally, it makes sense, and that'll be a lot. I kind of look at doing stuff like this makes sense long-term. It'll be a lot less expensive long-term,
Ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah. You and I were talking about that a little bit earlier, where it's like, I like to look at the body and say, I'd rather prevent fires. It's much easier to prevent fires than it is to put one out, and especially mentally, if you can prevent some of these fires from coming on, it makes a big difference.
Right on.
Let me see. So do you exercise? Do you take care of yourself? Like, let me put it this way. How do you take care of yourself?
No, man. No, I don't. I'm horrible at that. That's one of the new things that I'm going to work on. I was a gym rat for probably age of 14 to 23. A lot of just meathead nonsense exercising that's left me now closer to 40 with more aches and pains than I probably should have. Just with starting a business. Like I said, we're in our 6th year of a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. And listen, I totally understand that these are all excuses. But those excuses you have to face to say to yourself, like, okay, I got to get things back together.
But but that's pretty accurate though, in that a lot of times, especially when we're younger, we're doing things that we think are healthy for us, but we realize later on they might not have necessarily been the best for us, or like there were good benefits to it, but then also, okay, I could have done this a little bit differently, and it's like, I'm a big believer in learning from our mistakes, learning from those things, and trying to kind of like incorporate that, into as we move forward. I had a friend on my podcast a little while ago, Sean LaValle, who was talking about it. He and I we started exercising together in college, you start watching what you eat, and you think you're doing it right and doing it well, but then you learn later on, okay, well, that was just producing inflammation. I was doing too much. What I'm learning now with weightlifting and kettlebells and all of those things is that we're much better off going mild to moderate, not going so hard, not stressing our bodies, not stressing our bodies so much, because it takes so much time to recover from that. And sticking with the theory of recovery, in that, when you're younger, you can recover a lot quicker than what you can. You're almost 40, I'm almost 50 at this point. And so, I'm not going to be recovering as quickly as I was when I was younger, when I was 20, 25. And that's where I find whatever we can do to help us recover makes a big difference.
That sinks in so quickly at a certain, there's a quick drop off where you could go out and have some wings with some friends, a couple beers after work, responsible. But then there's just something where you're out and couple beers, couple wings, then the next day it feels like you were run over by a bus.
Yep.
And it's just your body's way of saying, I'm done with this.
I look at that as we're just not recovering from the toxins of the alcohol. Look at chicken wings at this point. It's just little balls of inflammation, And, look, I try and avoid that stuff, but, with my kids, I try and be a little more judicious about it, and that, I kind of think if I completely restrict it from them, then they're going to go crazy and go the opposite way. So I kind of figure at least they can see me eating healthy, but it's like, I from my father and my father's friends, I saw it where they all reached a point where they're in their 50s and they kind of stopped, really cut back on doing things like that because they said it hurt too much. And that it made sense. And I was starting seeing it more and more, and we're doing better than the previous generation did. We're not aging as quickly, we're knowing more about it, but, we still have the same bodies. We still react the same way to all of these stimuli. So we need to be careful about how we react to it.
I would say most mentally, for me, is a float tank. To keep myself healthy and balanced, I feel like, objectively looking at my strengths and weaknesses, I'm almost like a Madden player, where my physicality, I need to work on those attributes. But I'd say float tanks. I float once a week, and to be able to have my arms around thoughts and emotions and how I interact with others, and kind of round out those edges to be a kinder, nicer person. I've spent quite a bit of time doing that and have missed the gym. And listen, man, I love Taco Bell. Listen, I have dark little secrets. That's one of them.
But I kind of think, but everybody has their own, their own thing, their own vice, and I kind of figure it's like, as long as it doesn't overtake your life, and anything in moderation, I think is fine, but that can also easily get people into trouble.
Slippery slope, especially with any predispositions or wirings you may have. Yeah.
Well, no. So, how did you get into isolation tanks? How did you get interested into this, introduced to it?
Sure. For me, I was burning the candle at both ends. I had a very stressful full-time job. I was one of 2 counselors for a school with 1,500 kids, at-risk kids. It was really stressful. In the evenings, I was working on my second graduate degree, and to decompress and rest was those couple drinks. But at a certain point, you can't do that anymore. And my wife was like, well, let's try floating. I thought she was crazy, but we went and did it, and it was amazing. I just felt better. I had a great night of sleep. I felt very in the moment. I felt present. What I was looking for, I found what I was looking for with floating. And we just kept doing it. Even as I worked in education, we used it as a reason to travel around the country and see cool places. And
that's cool. That was fun.
That was awesome. And when circumstance left me without a job, the PA budget hit, and the school district was like, well, we only have funds for 2 of these people. You're number 3. Well, who do you email when you have that problem? You don't. You deal with it. And for me, it was what can I do to provide value to others and still help people that's not snake oil? And by that point, it had been floating for 2 or 3 years. And I thought, this really needs to happen in Pittsburgh.
I'm glad that you use that term, snake oil, because I personally feel there's still snake oil salesmen out there. And if you're in pain, if you're in pain, you're desperate, or you can get to that point of being desperate. And when you're desperate, there's people out there who are willing to take advantage of you, and there's all these people out there that claim that, oh, you can lose weight within 1 week. We can help out with your mental issues within 1 week. We can get you in shape in 1 week, different things like that, which there are no quick fixes to any of this stuff. It's just that there isn't, and you can't work at it like that.
It's very predatory.
Yeah,
it's very predatory. I'm a big fan of driving a line and seeing which side you're on. That's what I like most. I don't have to agree with folks.
Sure.
But I like to know where they stand.
Right.
And one of those things, when those are found out, it's shame on you, right? You know what I mean? And that's why I never wanted to have that, because I have a stellar reputation in all professions before, a really good laundry list of references. But at the end of the day, transitioning into something, I wanted to keep reputation of good ethics. And it was floating's really helped. I mean, it's not.
You could feel the effects with yourself. Yeah. And that's part of what really drew me into doing what I do, with the trigger point work, with the muscle work, because I saw the effects of it, and I see it directly, and it's great to see that. I know it works. We like to joke that the only motto we can think of for it is "this shit works," Yeah. And you see people walk out and they're like, "Man, I feel great." And so it's I want to provide somebody with a good quality service, and provide something for them, rather than just trying to one friend of mine put it, he's sell them ketchup popsicles.
Yeah.
It's just I want to be able to do something positive for people, and I love being able to do something positive and sustain and support my family by doing that.
Right on, man. There's never a better feeling. I have friends that are still what I call W-2s. They're plug it away. They have their retirement that they're holding on to. I just spoke to one this morning, and I was like, man, it's never going to be about money. It's just not. You're you have a comfortable living. You're happy. You're unhappy. It's you got to figure out what you want to do and how you can provide to the greater good and help people out. And if you do it well enough, people will pay you for it. That's the world we live in. If we both made it is such a leap of faith, though, that it's so scary for so many people to believe that they can wake up on a Monday morning and not have to be somewhere. But then it's all dependent on them, right? There's no other BS. There's no other nonsense of like, it's just my boss holding me down. Well, no, dude. Like, are you reading? Are you reading every night? Are you taking inventory? Are you listening to your feedback and constituents? How reflective are you being? Or are you just the man? Are you just the man that kill it every time? Or did you give up? I have, like I said, one of my best friends, I love him to death, but he'll tell me he wants to start a business. But I'm like, you can't start a business, watch 3 basketball games in the fall, and then Sunday watch 2 football games in the fall. That shit just doesn't work, man. That's like saying you're going to fall upwards. That's not going to happen. You got to put in the work. And I just listened to a great Jordan Peterson video this morning, and the way he said it was an old saying. It'll be found in the filth. Whatever it is for you, whatever your treasure is, will be found in the filth. And that means you're going to have to find a lot of humility and dig through that filth of what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, understand that, work on those things. And like I said, to put a bow on it, there's nothing more fulfilling than getting home, having food in the fridge, paying your bills, and helping other people.
Yeah, I completely agree. Rather than just being a cog in a machine, I completely agree. Troy, how are we with time?
We have guests at 1:30, so we have 10 more minutes before a hard stop. But I'm good if you're good. I have 10 more minutes.
Anything else you want to cover that we have missed? Honestly, this has been very interesting talking with you. This goes along really well with the stuff that I do. I love anything that helps with recovery. Helps. It's a positive effect on our bodies.
Yeah, man, I think I'm good. I love this conversation. It was good talking with you, Josh. I follow you on Instagram. Like I said, you always have such great information. I always watch your videos. To be able to have you in studio and to get to know you better than the 1-minute clip, man. Yeah, like really happy to have you here. I'm glad you stopped in.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This has been great. And once again, this is Dave Rapach from floatlevity.com. You can find him at Facebook, Levity412, and Instagram, Levity412 as well. I'm Dr. Josh Cohen from Pain Free Lifestyle and CohenTriggerPoint.com. You all have a pain-free day. Thank you.